The Dialogue with Clement Manyathela.
It's not just another roundtable discussion.
Let's walk the talk on 702.
So on our Thursday Dialogue this morning, I want us to have a discussion about this difficult and emotionally charged case, which has sparked a national conversation once again about religious freedom, children's rights, and medical ethics. It's about this teenage boy. You may have heard about this in the news or read about it. There's a teenage boy who's in critical need of a blood transfusion. He's being treated for a liver and kidney disease, but his family is refusing the treatment on religious grounds. And the case has now drawn the attention of health authorities, legal experts, religious organizations, and it's raising quite a difficult question, which is what takes precedence when the child's right to life and between the child's right to life and parental religious rights? So who ultimately decides when a child's life is at risk? The parents? Is it the doctors? Is it the courts? When does the state intervene? I mean, in this country, the Constitution protects both freedom of religion and the right to life and health care. But when those rights collide, the situation becomes deeply complex. And as I said to you in the first hour, my understanding is that for competent adults, sure, if you don't like or you don't want blood transfusion, you are legally protected under constitutional rights to freedom of religion, if that's the basis of you rejecting blood transfusion, for instance, if it's based on religious grounds. You are protected under the constitutional rights to freedom of religion, bodily autonomy, and human dignity. But when the patient is a child, that legal framework shifts significantly. The right to life takes precedence. So as a parent, you can't just refuse life-saving treatment based on religious beliefs. So where should the line then be drawn between parental rights and a child's right to life-saving care? I would like to hear from you. Maybe you understand where this family is coming from. Or maybe you've been in the same shoes where you felt, we don't want this medical intervention because it goes against our religious beliefs. Have you done that as an adult? Have you done that as parents of a young teen, of a young child? Give us a call on 011-883-0702. Your WhatsApp's on 072-702-1702. Let's start this conversation with Thifheli Luvhengo, who is the head of Department of Surgery at the Charlotte Maxeke Academic Hospital. Thank you so much for making time for us. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement, and good morning to your listeners. And actually, I was shaking when I learned that I was going to be interviewed by Clement.
Sorry, say that again. Say I missed it.
No, I was shaking when
shaking.
I was told just now that it's, Clement. I said, oh.
Nah, don't worry. You don't have to shake. You haven't done anything wrong. Only when you've done something wrong, you should be shaking before you speak to me.
Thank you.
I appreciate you making time for us. I just want to start off with, have you, as the hospital, taken a decision on what to do next? Because the family says, no, we don't want blood transfusion based on these religious grounds. I saw the Minister of Health advised you as the hospital to perhaps consider approaching the courts. What's your decision?
Yeah, I did indicate that it would be helpful to talk perhaps in general what we do.
Yes.
And indeed, I'm the head of surgery at Charlotte, so and so I'm responsible for the cutting side, but we also have got the accounting officers and all. And the message from the message from the minister was precisely how we do things. So yes, we divide our patients into adults, those who are competent to give consent, and regardless of whatever we like, if a competent person says, I don't need this, we do not. We follow that.
Yeah.
And for some of them, if they've given advance directives, even when they become unconscious, we go back and say, that's what the competent adult has said. when it comes to patients who cannot give consent, and then the question is the parents, yes, they are important, but when it comes to a crisis where the life of a child is at risk, that's when we do present all the options. We explain to the parents or the guardians, and if they still feel that some treatment should not be given, or they want to take, some parents may say, I don't want my child to be treated. I don't want, So you go to the rights of a child, and then we escalate it to the court if it's necessary, so that we are provided guidance.
Okay.
And it's not that we ignore the parents.
Yeah.
Parents still have the rights, but where the child's life is at risk, we are sort of guided by the law to say the child must be should be protected.
Okay.
If I give you examples in the past where the child had a very low HB, it's an emergency, and we needed to do the operation. You cannot do the operation in a child when the hemoglobin is 2, and that operation it needed to be done there. The parents refused. We got counsel. We got the religious leaders. They came. We explained. They spoke of different options, and we said those options, they are not going to work now.
What options did they give? Because I think for instance, they said there are other alternatives where you can generate blood without, going through the blood transfusion route.
Yeah, which we know. So, they will say, for example, give the driver something that you can drive the bone marrow to work faster and to produce more red cells. And that also has to be given time. Or please, when you operate, make sure you don't lose more blood. Or what you also do, can't you take blood from this patient, a day or two before you operate, store it somewhere, and when you operate, you can give this patient the same, his or her blood. And in which for some religious group is allowed, for others they will say the blood has left my body, it cannot happen. But you also have a situation where a patient is starting on a very low background, where he's struggling, there's anemia or there's bleeding problem, so that patient doesn't have a reserve. You cannot take something to put it in the bank with the hope that we'll give it back when there's no. And you also have, I'll just give an example, which is not really the patient we're dealing with. If you have, for example, transplant, the donor may be a relative that is planned. You can say, come, that your relative is going to donate this organ, the operation is going to be next week. Now, if you have a situation where the donor is going to be, when we have someone who is unfortunate, has passed on, and the family has, agreed to donate those organs, which is something that you cannot predict what's going to happen. How then do you prepare a patient for transplant when you do not know when the organs are, and do those things? So those are some of the issues. But where the child is at risk, as I said in the past, is escalated through the leadership structure, and it goes to the court. There's always a judge on call every hour of the day. Okay. So we've been able to escalate. Yeah.
Okay. So have you been able to escalate this in this matter without getting into the details? Have you been able to escalate it up to the court?
Yeah. You see, the point is, if we are not there yet, there's a multidisciplinary team that has to sit and explain this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And perhaps the information and the plan, what is going to be done, it might have been interpreted as if the operation has blood transfusion has to happen now, the transplant has to happen now, so it may be that in certain situations there's an explanation to say when the situation is like this, the transplant will be necessary, and if it's going to be necessary, there may be a requirement for blood and blood product transfusion. The emphasis, people are talking about hemoglobin, red cells, but blood transfusion is not limited to red cells.
Yeah.
There's also things that makes the body to clot. It's not going to be addressed by things that you give to close to hemoglobin, erythropoietin, and also dilution. You have got platelets there.
Yeah. Prof, thank you so much for coming through. I appreciate it. And I know it's very difficult for us to talk about this case because of patient-doctor confidentiality. But thank you for just broadly helping us understand where you are as the hospital and how you deal with these matters. Professor Thifheli Luvhengo is the head of the Department of Surgery at the Charlotte Maxeke Academic Hospital. It's 19 minutes after 11.
The Dialogue with Clement Manyathela.
It's not just another roundtable discussion.
Let's walk the talk on 702.
Right, Dr Aaron Motsoaledi, who's the health minister, joins us on the line. We've got Liesl Muller as well, who's a senior attorney at the Center, who's at the Center for Child Law, also joining this conversation. Let's start with the Minister of Health. Minister, thank you so much for making time. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement. Good morning to the listeners of Radio 702.
When doctors believe that a minor needs for instance, blood transfusion to survive, what procedures must hospitals follow if parents refuse that consent?
Well, I'm sure you have heard from the professor. We have got to follow procedures in terms of the Children's Act, which says whatever you do as an adult, you must always act in the best interest of the child. That's number one. Number two, you are aware that the Constitution gives rights. And because even if you didn't ask directly, this question arose because of religious beliefs.
Yes.
The Constitution gives rights. Some of the rights are the rights to religion and worship and all that. But I still believe the right to life trumps all of them, all the other rights as such in our Constitution. And at any rate, rights have got limitations in terms of Section 39 of the same Constitution that gives those rights. They are not forever. They've got very serious limitations. And as such, a right to life, as I'm saying, in my belief, will always trump all the other rights.
Okay. So at what point then does the Department of Health or the courts intervene to ensure that a child receives that life-saving treatment? So do you have to sit with the family first? Do you sit with the religious leaders? How much time do you give it? Because in some instances, the medical intervention is urgently needed.
We are informed by the treating doctor, Clement. The treating doctor will determine how urgent the issues are. And if it's very urgent, according to the treating doctor, there might not even be time to consult those religious leaders you are talking about. If it's an emergency, the treating surgeon, in terms of the Children's Act, has got the right to what you call, let's say it's not even about religion. It's just about giving consent. And there's nobody to give some consent, and the child is still very young, and you believe the operation is very urgent to save somebody's life. The treating surgeon or the superintendent of the hospital has got the right to give that consent. If there's still time, they can refer to the minister or even go to court. But it all depends on what the treating doctor is saying. We guided by that treating doctor.
How common are these disputes, Minister, in our healthcare system?
I knew them from as far as I was a student, Clement, especially, and unfortunately, I have to name the name of the religion because I'm not talking a story. I'm talking about my experiences, especially with people who subscribe. to Jehovah's Witness, which during our time used to be called Wat Tower. And usually it's about blood. I don't remember it being about any other thing other than blood, because it looks like they read somewhere in the Bible that a human being is not to receive blood from another human being. So that's exactly where problems always exist, especially when it comes to children. When it comes to adults, I mean, if the adult have chosen to die rather than receive blood, it will be very difficult for us doing anything. So our biggest problem has always been with children.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because I'm also just wondering now that in cases where the doctors or the state has intervened and said this child needs to be saved, and her or their child, their right to life takes precedence, and maybe the parents are unhappy with the decision. Do you know of any cases where the parents have tried to maybe sue the hospitals? Of course, that would fail, because at the end of the day, the courts would have to look at what the rights to the child are, which take precedence.
They will try to sue the hospital if the hospital moved on its own. You remember that this whole thing was also triggered by what I said to a reporter of Sowetan, who was asking me in general terms, and I spoke about going to court. Obviously, when you talk to the parents and realize that they are so adamant that they are going to try to sue, it's better to go to court directly, so that as to discourage them, rather than saying the superintendent or the minister can just sign and give consent. That's when we rush to the courts. But during my time as a student, maybe we did not have to go there, because we used to use other means to save children. Don't make me talk about this. But there are lots of means which you do, because this is an innocent child. Maybe it's a baby, a newborn baby of 3 months. You feel so bad. Out of a mere, deep belief in something that I believe does not exist, because I don't think God really is willing that children must just die even where help is there, because he has ruled that people cannot receive anybody's blood. So you do other means to make sure that you save this child. And let me not talk about that, because it was in the olden days that we used to do something like that. But we saved many babies.
Yeah.
Very, very many babies using other methods,
Yeah.
Because you can see this is driven by sheer belief. Religion can cause world wars and all that, Yes.
No, true. Minister, thank you so much. Thank you for coming through to join this chat. Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi is the Minister of Health. Liesl Muller, as I said, Senior Attorney at the Center for Child Law. Liesl, thank you so much for also joining this conversation. We're talking here about the Constitution, which protects both religious freedom and the right to life. So when those rights clash, like in this case involving this child, how does the law resolve it?
Hi, Clement. Thank you for having me. I'm very grateful that the minister already set out some of the provisions. Indeed, there is a right to access health care, and then what we haven't mentioned yet is that the child also has the right to have their best interests considered paramount in every matter that affects them. And then there is also the child's right to participate in decision-making about their health. And so what we haven't really touched on here is the fact that the Children's Act tells us when who should give consent. And actually what it says is that a child who is over the age of 12 has the right to give consent to medical surgery, but it says that they must do so with the assistance of their parents. So if the parents refuse, but the child has a different view, for instance, then, like the minister said, there's always the option that the superintendent can override that consent in specific circumstances, to circumstances specifically when the urgency is, when it's so urgent that they have to make a decision to save the child's life. I assume possibly in the middle of an operation or something like that. And then if refusing the treatment will lead to serious and lasting injury, the superintendent can also override the decision. Now, I agree with the minister. If I was a superintendent, I would approach the court before to get to have the court do the consent because, like you said, the Act does not allow the parent to refuse if it is only on the basis of religion.
What happens, though, if the child is under the influence of the parents? So if the child is over the age of 12 and says to the doctors, I do not want, for instance, let's say in this case, blood transfusion, but because that's what, the child also believes, and that's what that's a position the parents have taken, and the child doesn't necessarily want to, take a different position, then what do the doctors do in that case? When they know that what is best in the best interest of this child right now is that he receives this medical intervention, but the child says, no, I don't want it, just like my parents say.
And I mean, that's likely that children follow often, at that point still the religion of their parents. But even the child's consent or refusal can be overturned by a court. And so when they're in court, they will have to weigh up various factors. And so the best interest is one of them. And the best interest isn't as straightforward as just not letting children die. There's also the interest of the child being part of his community, the possibility of being shunned once he's had a blood transfusion. So there are many things to consider when you're deciding on the best interest. But these cases have so far, the courts have, in all the cases that I've been, that I'm aware of, overridden that refusal and granted the hospital, the authority to go ahead with the operation. But there is a case in the UK, and this could very well happen here, where a child who was over 12 refused cancer treatment, and the court did not, the court respected his wishes, and I think he eventually died without getting cancer treatment. So it's definitely possible for a child to have a different view and to refuse treatment, and for the court to be okay with that. So that's why I'm very interested to know what the views of this child is.
Yeah. So in your experience, Liesl, do these cases, usually end up in court? And how quickly then, in your experience, have you seen decisions being made, when time is so critical? Because sometimes, you need urgently to get that blood transfusion and the transplant has to happen now, or maybe in other medical emergencies where there's not really time to wait for 3 days before a judge can make a ruling on the matter. How do they normally handle these cases?
I mean, an urgent matter can come before a judge at any point. Normally there's just kind of the considerations of being able to, put your case before court, and then for the other party to, bring their case. So you need at least a few hours, But there are cases where you phone up the judge's clerk and say, look, can we come see you, at 5 o'clock today? And that's possible. But like you say, when it's something that kind of has to happen in the next hour or two, then the superintendent will make the decision without the court's supervision, and then, face the consequences later. But like the minister said, the superintendent will likely, find favor with the court if it was truly an emergency.
Sure. Yeah, it's quite something else. It's 11:31. Let's get the latest in Eyewitness News headlines.
The Dialogue with Clement Manyathela.
It's not just another roundtable discussion.
Let's walk the talk on 702.
24 minutes before 12 o'clock. All right, so you've heard from the Minister of Health, Dr Aaron Motsoaledi. You've heard from the head of the Department of Surgery at Charlotte Maxeke Academic Hospital. You've heard from Liesl Muller, who is a senior attorney at the Center for Child Law. I think you sort of get a sense of what does the law say when there is a clash between the rights to religious freedom, right, and the right to life. What do you do? What actually takes precedence in a matter that involves a child? It was interesting that Liesl mentioned this case in the UK where a child who was about 12 or so refused cancer treatment and died later on, and the doctors had to respect that decision. And I wonder, in cases where, yes, the child is under the authority of the parents, and maybe the hospital says, we are going to overrule the parents by actually approaching the courts to give us the green light to practice what the Constitution says, which is the right of the child takes precedence in a matter where parents may want to say no to certain medical interventions on the basis of their religious beliefs. But what if that child also says, I agree with my parents, I don't want blood transfusion, like in this case? I mean, the child, I'm not aware if this child has said anything in this matter. I think he's about 14, 15. Yeah, 14, 15. But if the child says, I also don't want it, what do the doctors do? Do they do like the doctors did in the UK when the child said, I don't want cancer treatment? And you say to the child, okay, if you don't want blood transfusion, this is the only option that can work for you right now. And then do you just say to the child, then we'll have to just keep you here until your last breath? How do you handle that? I mean, it sounds really complicated to me. Let's chat on 011-883-0702. Dr. Skumbuzo, you calling us from Soweto. Good morning.
How are you?
Hey, Tada, I'm okay. How are you?
Good, man. You know, I think we just, as South Africans or as people, sometimes a little bit of education and educate ourselves is important. Let me tell you, I'm not so much about talking about this case in particular, but there are cases on organ donation in general, where we die with our useful kidneys, useful cornea, useful heart, because of some religious belief that God or someone on the other side or my ancestors on the other side will ask me this and that. But people are happy to donate blood, which is also, if you can argue, it's an organ. Blood is an organ, you know. And I think people in general are for donation and receiving. I know instances where someone overrode their priest's decision. As they left, said, hey, listen up, don't listen to these guys. I want this thing, okay? You give it to me, okay? The very same religions. But I want to go further and say, you know, I think you should have this talk where we discuss organ donation. Because I think in this country we want to donate, but we just are not given an opportunity to do that. As in, to donate our skin, donate everything. In other countries, believe it or not, Clement, people opt out of donations. So everyone is assumed to want to donate. So if you don't want to donate, you're going to go and make an application to say, I want to die with my organs. I'm not going to donate. But when you die and you've not opted out, then we're going to use your organs. I think it's a better thing. I mean, in this country, ophthalmologists, a simple thing as a cornea, they have to get it from the US, Europe. People want it. But people are dying and their eyes are closed. I mean, we close people's eyes. The eyes are closed. Yeah. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, we should have that. I wanted to speak to the minister on that I think they should lobby, you know, they should have a white paper, what, and comments on, in this country, we should have this option of opting out. We are assumed to want to donate. If you don't want it, then you're going to go sign.
Yeah. Okay. So then it becomes just an assumption. And if you want to opt out, you have to go through the process. Yeah, I got you. Dr. Skumbuzo, thank you for your call. Let's hear what the other listeners think. Let me bring in quickly Mosa Mphore, who is the founder of Open Eye Foundation, who is also an organ donation recipient. Mosa, thank you so much for joining our conversation. Good morning.
Oh, well, thank you so much, team. Hi, guys, and good morning to the listeners as well.
My understanding is that you work with a lot of families. You have to counsel them who often have to receive organ donations. What are the scenarios that you normally deal with? I suppose you are not surprised of this case that we're seeing at Charlotte Maxeke Academic Hospital.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Well, firstly, let me start by really saying that great work at 702 for bringing up this topic. I mean, it's a huge topic or deal in our country. I'm quite young. I'll just give a bit of a background a bit. I was diagnosed with end-stage kidney failure at the age of 21. And so you can imagine at that age, I was quite confused. Didn't know what's happening. I was quite sick, very, very sick. And we started this organization to ensure that we would educate particularly Black people on chronic illnesses that lead to organ failure. But our main mission is to ensure that Black people understand the importance of organ donation, blood donation, all the organs, heart, liver, and kidneys as well. So eventually I got transplanted in 2013. I mean, that really saved my life, the lives of my family as well, because I couldn't work when I was sick. I mean, being on dialysis every day, 3 times a week, it's quite difficult. So you can't really do much. So I just want people to get the context of how important organ donation or maybe transplant is, even blood transfusion, how important it is, because without that, we're going to have problems. I myself have received blood numerous times because you would be anemic if you have kidney failure. And also when they do the operation, of course, when they do a transplant, they would need to transfuse you. So, yeah, man, we've dealt with a lot of families. Coming back to your question quickly, we've dealt with a number of families, but this is not a rare issue. It's quite not that common, but yes, it happens that you find people that believe strongly in religion, that they say they don't want blood transfusion. But in this case, then you find a young person, a child for that matter, or a minor, someone that his parents have to say yes or no to receiving blood or the organ due to religious beliefs. Our job is to just advise families. Our job is to also stand on the fence and talk to doctors to make them understand, because I understand where Black people come from in terms of their cultural or their religious beliefs. And we need to really uphold those decisions. However, like I said, it's quite different in this case because a child needs an organ, and we need to ensure that in everything that we do, life is preserved. Yeah.
Well, what are some of the concerns that families would raise with you, or people who would later on be recipients of organs that get donated? Do you find that the reason that is being advanced for refusing the donations, whether giving or receiving, is based on religious reasons, or sometimes it's just people who are scared, who don't really understand what this process entails?
Look, we've done quite a lot of educational seminars. We've done a lot of campaigns. I mean, I've walked 80 kilometers from Soweto to Pretoria, another 80 kilometers in the Eastern Cape, working for a guy by the name of Oliphant who needed a kidney. So we're doing a campaign for organ donation in the country. Look, people, when you're in a situation where you're supposed to receive an organ, look, that's the only thing you want. You want to get that organ so that your life can get back to normal. And we found out that people make uninformed decisions. Our people are not well educated in terms of organ donation, or rather how or what will the organ do for you. Our people are not well educated, and our people do receive the message and the education very well. I mean, I've been to clinics, I've been in hospitals, we've sat down, we've discussed this with the department as well. The only thing is that we need to do more campaigns. We need to educate our people even more in schools, even in churches. I remember we had a campaign with traditional healers here in Soweto, and we had over 300 traditional healers. And the discussion was simple. Please do advise people to go see the doctor if they do come to you and you see we suspect that this person has end-stage kidney failure or this person needs an organ. Also advise that person that they should take blood or that organ, that their ancestors won't have a problem with them receiving that organ. So it's a bit of a catch-22 challenge that we are faced with as an organization, because we have to actually educate our people and explain to them the importance of organ donation and that they need to donate organs, not blood only, but we do need those organs in our country.
Yeah, there's a serious need. Mosa, thank you for coming through. Mosa Mphore, founder of Open Eye Foundation and organ. He's also an organ recipient. It's 13 minutes now before 12.
The Dialogue with Clement Manyathela.
It's not just another roundtable discussion.
Let's walk the talk on 702.
All right, let's hear from you now on 011-883-0702. Bernard, let's start with you. You're calling from Pretoria. Good morning.
Morning, Clement. How are you?
Sharp, man. Go ahead. What are your thoughts?
I'm okay. Clement, my question is very simple and short. I want to know why is it a big issue to those Christians who uphold God's standard rules?
What do you mean? Why is it a big issue?
Such a big issue. I'll listen over the radio. Why is such a big issue if someone upholds to God's standard rules and he wants to die or she wants to die with her boots on, depending on God's standard rules in terms of...
What are God's standard rules?
Pardon?
What are those God's standard rules?
God's standard rules, it says, don't share any blood of another person into your own body.
So you can share parts, but not blood?
It said, don't share any parts or any form of blood of another human being.
So this
into
child
your
can
body.
have a liver transplant, but just not the blood. But he can take an organ that belongs to somebody else.
Even that one, God doesn't approve.
So why did the parents then bring the child to hospital then?
Pardon?
Why are the parents then bringing the child to hospital? What other option do you think is there? So if in this case the child has a serious critical kidney and liver disease which requires a transplant, the family knows that. If the family believes that there must never be an organ transplant or there must never be the sharing of blood, what are you taking the child to the hospital for?
Because the child was seriously ill and maybe parents, they were not aware if there will be some sort of an organ transplant or, anything that's related to blood. Maybe
they are now aware.
But now the doctors have told them and they will tell them their position. So they will take the child out and they'll rely on God.
No, my understanding... Oh, he's just dropped the call. My understanding is that the parents don't necessarily have an issue with the liver transplant. It's just the blood transfusion. But the doctors are saying, no. If we go through that surgery, this child is going to die. There's going to be complications. The likelihood is he won't survive because we need blood transfusion. So the family says, no, come up with other alternatives. So is the issue the blood or is the issue the parts as well? My understanding is that the family hasn't raised the issue of the organs. But once again, the doctors also rely on what the Constitution says. And our Constitution is very clear. You as an adult can say, no, I don't want blood transfusion. I don't want a transplant. But if you're representing a child, what takes precedence here is the child's right to life. So you as a parent may feel that our religion doesn't allow us to even do a blood transfusion to save this child's life. But the doctors have to rely on what the Constitution says in an instance where the right to religious freedom and the right to life collide. In a case where it's the parents' religious reasons who are guardians of the child, the right to life for this child takes precedence. But if the child is 12, 13 and says no, in the UK they've allowed the child who's refused cancer treatment, who later died. And I suppose in our context here, maybe the doctors also allow that. But I'd like to hear from the doctors themselves who have faced something similar. Shelley, you are in Joburg. What are your thoughts? Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
I'd just like to say that prohibition was brought in the Bible, in the book of Leviticus, and then brought again to Christians in the book of Acts. And so this is a very important thing because even specialists have used artificial blood with success and with a good recovery. And also, Dr. Denton Cooley his book, he mentioned that he would not allow any of his family to have blood because it's like Russian roulette. You don't know what disease is going to come from that blood. So this is a prominent person. And other than that, there are, as I said, are specialists who will successfully use artificial blood. They have done it. So the creator of the universe, the creator of man, knows what's best for us. We don't always know exactly the reason, but it's there and he's put it there for us. So each one must decide who they want to please.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley, for your contribution. Nomsa, you're in Kempton Park. Good morning.
Morning. I advocate for blood or organ donation, but the problem that we experience in our community, one of the people that I was actually giving a lecture, she said to me her challenge is that if she donates her part and later in life her children start experiencing problems and they go and see a sangoma for whatever reasons, and that sangoma will be telling them that unesinyama, which is bad luck, because your mother or your father is crying, and then you'll like ask them what happened to your mom, and they will be like, say, my mom died suddenly, but she donated a liver and whatever. And then she said, then the sangoma will start confusing them, because that is what is happening in our community. Confusing them that your mother is crying because she's complaining where is her liver. Meanwhile, those are just stories. I think the challenge in our community, we still need to teach people about that, because their fear is that they're going to experience bad luck about their parents who are complaining, but by a kotola, because one organ was actually given to another person. Yeah, that's my story.
Nomsa, thank you so much for your call. Hilda, you're in False Loras. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement. Clement, I thought the minister will be there because I wrote him an email yesterday. Clement, I'm a reflexologist by profession. I'm registered under Allied Health Professional Council. So we've got two bodies of the government. The Health Professional Council are doctors who are practicing chemical medicine. Doctors who are registered under Allied Health Professional Council are practicing using natural medicine. So reflexology, homeopathy, naturopathy, and other professions were not available in our country until doctors who came from overseas, they came in the country and opened schools. So we studied, and then all these professions, homeopathy, reflexology, they went to Parliament for approval until the Minister of Health, Manto Shabalala Msimanga, has approved in 2002, said, people of South Africa have got now a freedom of choice as to how they heal. They can now. Then Allied Health Professional Council was formed. So my problem with this, we were hoping that these professions, because we're not available in our country, we want this to work for our people. It will be available in public hospitals, because my duty is to stimulate the organs that are malfunctioning. The acupuncturists, the Chinese doctors who are acupuncture, they are available, but we are not allowed to work in public hospitals. We work privately, and our poor people, they don't have money to come to us. If the minister, that's why I wrote him yesterday, I remind him that, look, we wanted to work in public hospitals. This has been approved at the parliament. If you don't allow, this must go back to the parliament that you don't want this treatment for our people. So I'm expecting his email today. If you don't respond, I said to him, I'm going to go back to the media. People must know that we are depriving people. Even this, the blood transfusion for the child, the blood must go to the machine and come back to the body. That one is wrong. You've got detox machines where we put your foot and connect the machines, and then the blood can be cleaned natural without being extracted from your body. Those professions, the minister knows. So now I don't know. I'm waiting for his answer that we can debate with him. There are doctors under Allied Professional Council that they can save this child.
Okay. Hilda in False Loras got you. Ayanda, you're in Boksburg. Hi.
Hi, I'm in Boksburg, and I am a social work transplant professional. And yes, organ donation is very important. And maybe based on the first speaker, is that there's always an assessment that needs to be done to determine whether the family can protect and still protect the organ that will be given to the individual. So there are a lot of psychoeducation that needs to be provided the patient and the family. Yes, sometimes the blood transfusion, there is a lot of cultural sensitivity around it as not.
I'm sorry, I have to cut it there. The line is deteriorating so bad, and I really would have loved to hear from you as a transplant social worker. It's 30 minutes now before 12.